Hello, my name is Jonathan Gawthrop. I'm the Executive Director for Wellbeing, Sustainability and Assurance for EMCOR UK, and I am absolutely delighted to have been asked to spend the next 20-25 minutes or so talking to you about what it means to be psychologically safe in the workplace, and to link some of that conversation with the upcoming ISO 45003 framework for psychosocial safety in workplaces. Before I start, I'd just really like to give you a bit of an overview in terms of EMCOR UK, and this is important because I want to be able to put some of this discussion into context with regards to our own experiences. So just to give you a bit of a flavour for what we do as an organisation, we're a facilities management business here in the UK, as you can see, with around 4,500 employees distributed throughout the countries, and we do various facilities management tasks, as you would expect, in terms of both hard and soft services activity. And we have certainly over the last 2 or 3 years really begun to emphasize the way that we work with our teams in terms of making our well-being and our psychological safety approaches come in line with our more traditional physical safety approaches, which have been embedded in our organisation successfully for a number of years. And it's that kind of pace that we have applied in the psychological safety space, which I'd really like just to unpack for you and give you a flavour for perhaps some of the learnings that can be had in this space. And as I say, this is particularly relevant now because come June, July, we are expecting that the ISO framework, ISO 45003, will be in play. And that has got specific information that is really an extension of ISO 45001, the health and safety international standard. And those extensions really are beneficial in so much as a lot of the language and a lot of the intentions that are held within the new framework are going to be recognisable to those organisations who have already adopted the 45001 standard. And in essence, there is a practical thinking behind the standard or the framework, and that is that it is going to need to permeate throughout the organisation, as opposed to it simply being a kind of standalone feature in a particular space within the organisation. And I think that's really where I'd like to start with respect to our own experience. In terms of what we understand and how we're approaching it, it is that we defined our approach in the first instance, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. Then we obviously need to demonstrate that, and by demonstrating it I mean two things. One, actually going out and showing how it is working, and two, measuring it, so being able to demonstrate back into the business exactly what is happening, so the kind of so what as a result of the activity that we're undertaking. Thirdly, it will come as no surprise, there needs to be a commitment to it, and that commitment I'll show you in terms of the kind of tiered approach throughout the organisation, which again ties back into what I was saying about that framework approach. And then that in essence should lead to making it cultural. And of course in health and safety environments, traditional health and safety environments, we define culture as being the way things are done around here, and we see this certainly as being no different. And without further ado, let's get into a bit of the detail. So in terms of EMCOR UK, how we've defined it is linked specifically to our purpose, and our purpose is a better world at work. And you can see here as well, for those of you who recognise them, that we've adopted 5 of the global goals tiles, and these tiles are essentially underwriting all of our activity. And there's a point of contention here almost that I'd like to draw upon, because you'll see those 5 tiles don't explicitly talk about well-being. Tile 3 is the sustainability global goals tile, and it was felt very much in our organisation, and then in the discussions that we had around which tiles to adopt, that what was absolutely critical was that we were able to effect change within the constructs of that tile. So in the case of tile 3, we felt very much that it was practitioner led, and we didn't see that we could really affect any of the criteria that was listed. And so therefore our well-being approach, our approach to psychological safety in the workplace, is actually captured under tile 8, under decent work. And decent work, of course, is essentially built around almost Maslow's hierarchy of needs in respect of individuals having personal safety at the bottom of that triangle, leading all the way up through, in real terms, job design and purpose and autonomy, to create that whole psychologically safe person and construct around the person. So that's where we have recognized it. So we link our activity to tile 8, and therefore everything that we talk about in the psychologically safe space is embedded within our organizational purpose, because all of our decision making is linked to these 5 tiles in terms of the way that we run our operation. So we have therefore a strategic aim, which you can see there, and then also we have a strategic theme. So both of those are baked into all of the activity that we do. But in sum, I think that aim is fairly clear, and does tie in, as I say, into the upcoming framework, which is to take a preventative approach as opposed to a pathogenic kind of reactive approach to our well-being and psychological safe activities. So we have a framework of activity which is built around our understanding of what our teams would benefit from, and that benefits analysis is essentially brought out of pulse surveys, but also the Britain's Healthiest Workplace responses, and we've used that feedback to inform our strategic thinking for the next couple of years. So having defined it, and let's be fair, you know, in terms of well-being itself, it's probably only about 18 months ago that people were having huge debates around whether well-being, the word, should be hyphenated or not. So it has really moved on quite considerably. We've defined it, and now we move into that demonstrable space. So although we have well-being baked into a job title and a departmental title, we very much see that it is interconnected within all of those disciplines that we undertake across the organisation. You can see here that we've identified the other areas within the business, and particularly underneath each of those areas, those kind of disciplines where we interact with the other departments. And that really does enable us then to ensure that we're kind of permeating out almost laterally through the organisation, through the disciplines that they undertake. And that, you can see top right there, that includes our supply chain. So this is not something that we have our arms wrapped around and keep contained within the boundaries of EMCOR UK. We genuinely demonstrate these behaviours through our supply chain network, and also through our network, indeed through networks like SHP and Business in the Community, and numerous other ones as well, to ensure that not only are we learning from others' experiences, but we're also able to share our own personal experiences and our own personal journeys as well. But there you can also see the way that the department is set up, and again I think that's fairly interesting in as much as we've incorporated our safety operations, our technical delivery and our safety operational delivery under the wellbeing heading. So that comes back to that point of definition for us as a business. We defined wellbeing as sitting beneath a better world at work and integral to a better world at work, and then below that the way that we discharge those kind of tactical activities throughout safety operations and well-being tactical activities, management of risk and technical risk, and also our environmental and sustainability activities as well are all incorporated within that department. So this is essentially what's inside our heads, and we've done our utmost to make it relatively clear, but as you can see in terms of mind mapping, there is this whole systems approach to the way that we have considered the management and the discharging of psychological safety and psychosocial workplace safety across EMCOR UK, and there is a whole range there of activities which we've considered, and underneath each one of those we've got a maturity matrix which kind of kicks the tires of how we're doing. So we'll make that initial statement around what it is that we feel that we need to do, and we then underwrite that with a plan, and then that plan is sense checked throughout the course of the year to ensure that we're able to answer this so what question. Now all of this might seem a little bit obvious, but actually it's critical to making it stick within the business to have this kind of approach, because if we think about the way that the ISO 45001 standard, as I said earlier, the 45003 standard is no different in terms of its intentions. If we think about the way that it's written, this kind of permeating throughout the organisation is absolutely critical to its success. So to identify any one person or indeed any one department as being responsible for it is simply not going to achieve what the framework is set out to achieve. And a great example of that is the ownership of our own, what we've termed creating balance activity, which is owned by our Human Resources Department and captures all of our work around D&I and inclusivity, and is integrated fully with our own well-being and psychological safety strategy, because obviously they share a number of tenets which are interchangeable across the two departments. So that relationship is interdepartmental relationship is absolutely critical in terms of the success. I think the only other thing I'd like to talk about on this slide really, and just giving you enough time to absorb it, is that whole point there around the mitigation of psychological risk as part of ISO 45003. So as an organisation, we want to be an early adopter, and we're working with BSI to be an early adopter of 45003, much as we were with 45001. And in preparing ourselves for that, we actually adopted the 27500 framework last year. So ISO 27500 is the human-centered organisational framework, and some of the language and some of the thinking that was in that framework was kind of foundational to some of the early drafts of the 45003 standard. So it's begun to create that mindset within the organisation that enables us to think about our approaches in these spaces. So I've talked here really about the concept. Let's just kind of talk about this so what question then, if I can, for a few minutes. So The measurement of our activity is absolutely critical. As I said, from a foundational point of view, we've based it very much on the Pulse survey and Britain's Healthiest Workplace Responses, which was driven out by our Human Resources Department. And we've worked with them to have a look at the results of that and then build this model for the way in which we discharge the activity, but also create the feedback loop and close it out in terms of, well, we've asked the question, we now need to do something about it in order to show that we've listened and heard and feed that back. But in addition to that, we also need to make sure that we're feeding back the responses. Then there's another overarching piece here, which is to measure that effect in terms of the organisation. So it's not just a case of having been asked to undertake a particular task and then feeding back that the task has been closed out. It is also making sure that it's got some relevance. So if we go right back to the beginning of this presentation where I was talking about our purpose, everything that we do links back through those 5 tiles into a better world at work to ensure that there's complete connectivity and relevance to what we are doing. I'm sure that everybody who's listening to this is like-minded in terms of understanding that looking after our employees and our teams as best we can and enabling people to bring their whole selves to work is something that we're morally obligated to undertake as employers. And there are also obviously legislative factors around that obligation as well. But there's a third part, which is ensuring that it features within the direction of travel and the purpose for the organisation. Because if it is in any way disconnected, then we lose the authenticity of what it is that we're looking to do. And underwriting all of this is the need for authenticity. Again, that demonstration piece, which is twofold. One is the figures and what effect is the activity having, but the other part of that is that authentic demonstrating, walking the talk piece, which is absolutely essential throughout all areas of the organisation. So we've developed this model here, which has its sort of 4th tier in wellbeing strategy, key performance indicators, and those key performance indicators are relatively limited, but they are again linked into a better world at work and those global goals. So under decent work, under tile 8, we have a number of key performance indicators specifically linked to looking after the psychological health of our teams and also the psychological health of the teams in our supply chain as well. So the behaviours that we demonstrate within EMCOR UK are also demonstrable in terms of everybody that we come into contact with, be it our customers, be it our supply chain, or be it our community. And make no mistake, we are absolutely relentless in our pursuance of that. And I think sometimes some of the challenge that comes back when one's talking about psychological safety is that it almost feels as if it's an easy thing to do, almost this laissez-faire kind of approach to the way in which operations are undertaken. Our experience is that it's the absolute opposite of that, and that for the delivery of real psychological safety within the organisation, a really hard line has to be taken with respect to things that are non-negotiable. So behaviours that contradict everything that I've been talking about in terms of positive work experience need to be challenged and not accepted. And that's something that we are particularly hard on and robust on in terms of making sure that our journey is as authentic as it needs to be. So again, you'll see in this model, for those of you with a more experienced eye in terms of the physical health and safety approach, that we're talking in the same sort of language that we talk about in that safety culture space. So the integrated approach, the development of this relationship and the development of the program, to get us to that kind of interdependency level whereby everybody is just behaving in a way and looking after one another in a way that is wholly conducive to the way that we wish to operate as an organisation. And this kind of sums up what I've been talking about. And I had a great conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago with Dr. Sean Davis from the Royal Mail, who kind of introduced another strata here, which was around the mood in the middle, which I really liked. So we talk a lot about the tone from the top. We talk a lot about people at the sharp end of our business and ensuring that they're engaged so that we don't get this disconnect in terms of work imagined versus work done. And there's this mood in the middle, and I think that one of our areas of focus and why we're so keen to make sure that framework, the ISO 45003 framework, wraps around all of this, is because we do, as an organisation, need to ensure that mood in the middle is brought along on the journey, and that the resources and the structure is in place to enable that middle strata to really operate in a way that the organisation demands of the tone from the top, and also the sharp end of the business as well. Sometimes it can be missed. So I think that's a really great point and something that we're building into our thinking as well. So you can see here that we've identified against each one of those kind of strata the responsibilities, if you like, of people who operate within that space. And I think what's really, really important here in terms of that removing stigma, which really supports positive psychological safety, is the opportunity to be open and to tell one's own story and begin to get a drumbeat and a narrative through the organisation whereby people understand it's a safe place to be and a safe place to be oneself. And we've recently undertaken to sign up to the This Is Me campaign, and that's proven to be extremely successful. By way of enlightenment, I think that the organisation and certainly I was quite taken aback by the way that it's been adopted and the positive responses that individuals who have engaged with that openly have received. And so I can really recommend that if that's not something that you've come across. But I'm sure some of you at this point are saying, well, yeah, okay, I get all of that, but what are you actually telling us here? So here we go. So this is it. Let's not confuse a psychosocial workplace safety with psychological safety. There is a definition here, but they are intrinsically linked. So psychological safety is essentially described by Amy Edmondson, Professor Amy Edmondson, as being the opportunity to engage within a team environment at a group level without fear of retribution. And it's essentially, if you take that forward a stage or two, it's about inclusivity. Psychosocial safety is about the environmental conditions that essentially fuel and support that psychological safety. So what we can't do is just simply think that the psychological safety is the responsibility of the individual. The organisation has responsibility to create the conditions within that psychosocial space that enable everybody to be the best version of themselves that they can be, and to bring their whole selves to work. And I think that's absolutely critical, because that is what the framework is designed to achieve. From that, and getting that right, then psychological safety will flow and flourish. And I think that's really the point that I would leave you with, is I have used those terms interchangeably along with well-being, And I think it's important to start with your own definition and to be clear about what the definition of each of those terms are. And then when you're explicit about that, to authentically deliver against those definitions. So I'm going to end there. Again, I'd like to thank SHP and Ian Hart in particular for the opportunity to speak at you for the last 25 minutes. And I will be happy to take any questions following this presentation. So again, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and do reach out if you think that I or EMCOR UK can help in your own personal journeys in this regard. Thank you very much.